So we have some important updates that we need to talk about in the lawsuits against the ATF and their new restrictions on forced reset triggers. This is a case a lot of you guys are asking me about, so let's break down what is happening. Now, really quick before we jump into this video, I want to mention that looking at some of my analytics, about 60% of all my viewers are actually not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to support this channel for free, subscribing is one of the best ways to do that. Of course, you're not obligated to do that, but it's free. And then also just double check because YouTube loves to unsubscribe people. Also, I want to thank one of the main supporters of my channel, which is Kershaw Knives. Kershaw has some of the best knives available on the market if you're looking for a quality EDC knife. I carry a Kershaw Iridium knife every single day for my EDC, and I cannot recommend them enough. So if you want to pick up a quality EDC knife, check them out, go to the website, and if you use the code ARMED40, you can get 40% off of your order. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, I have an update for you on the battle against the ATF and their new restrictions on forced reset triggers. You may recall that earlier this year, we received news that a lower court issued a preliminary injunction which blocked the ATF's current attacks on forced reset triggers. That was a preliminary injunction, it's not a final decision, but it was a step in the right direction. That order came in a case called Nagr versus Garland. That order was issued by Judge Reed O'Connor, which temporarily prevented the ATF from enforcing their FRT rule against the plaintiffs in that case, along with Nagr and their members. Well, as we all knew, the ATF would not give up on that case, so they appealed up to the Fifth Circuit, and they wanted the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals to reverse that preliminary injunction. The ATF is currently asking for the Fifth Circuit to overturn that injunction, and the FRT case was recently kind of in limbo, and it was kind of a little bit on hold because a lot of these cases dealing with the ATF's overreach were sitting behind the Cario bump stock case. And the Cario bump stock case was seeking review from the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was set to rule in that case. Well, as many of you are aware, the Supreme Court recently issued a 6-3 decision striking down the ATF's restrictions on bump stocks. And again, it dealt with a similar issue, which was what does the definition of machine guns under the GCA cover? What items does it include? Does it include items like bump stocks? And in this case, does it include items like forced reset triggers? Now, that case in Cario was a huge win with major implications, and now the plaintiffs in this FRT case are using the Cario decision as support for why the Fifth Circuit should also agree that FRTs and their restrictions by the ATF are invalid. Now, for this case, I need to lay some groundwork so you understand what has been going on between the ATF and the company here, Rare Breed Triggers, and the multi-year saga between the ATF and this company and the ATF wanting to restrict these items. Now, back in July of 2021, the ATF sent a cease and desist letter to Rare Breed Triggers. In that letter, the ATF claimed that in their eyes, the Rare Breed FRT-15, that forced reset trigger, meets the NFA and GCA's definition of a machine gun. Because of that, the ATF claimed that the triggers were subject to regulations, registration, taxation, possession restrictions, and that they would be treated as actual machine guns. Also, the ATF claimed that the possession of those triggers outside of the GCA and NFA's restrictions would subject people to criminal penalties and fines. Now, of course, when that letter went out, that was a big concern to a lot of people who purchased these items. Now, in that letter, the ATF told Rare Breed to cease and desist the manufacture and transfer of the triggers and to contact them so that they could figure out what they needed to do with all the triggers that were already sold and in the possession of individuals' hands. Now, this issue was not isolated to just Rare Breed. There were other companies that also got wrapped into this, and then there was all of a background kind of battle between all that stuff and, some patent issues, but we're not going to cover that here in this video. But it was not isolated to just this one company. The ATF took this position on all forced reset triggers. Now, recently, Rare Breed partnered with Nagr to file a lawsuit against the ATF, and that was filed in the Northern District of Texas. Now, that case went into the hands of Judge O'Connor, who was a very favorable judge and has issued favorable wins in our favor and the Pro 2A's favor in cases like the pistol brace cases against the ATF, and then also the unfinished frames and receivers case. Now, while all this was also going on, there were also some lawsuits which were filed by the federal government, the U.S. government, against Rare Breed Triggers in the Eastern District of New York. Now, ultimately, that federal district court ruled in favor of the government, in favor of the federal government, and granted their preliminary injunction against Rare Breed Triggers and then also Rare Breed firearms. That injunction prevents them from engaging in any sales of various FRTs and other devices. However, we also had Judge O'Connor in this federal district court in Texas who originally granted Nagr and Rare Breed their request for a TRO, or a temporary restraining order. But now he has also issued a preliminary injunction against the ATF and their regulation of FRTs. Judge O'Connor is reaching his decision using the en banc's decision in Cargill, which ultimately did strike down the ATF's interpretation of bump stocks as actual machine guns. In his order, he ruled that plaintiffs are likely to succeed on the merits. Here, the plaintiffs contend that the ATF's regulation broadening the machine gun definition is an arbitrary and capricious expansion of the agency's authority. Plaintiffs are likely correct. Accordingly, the court concludes that plaintiffs have carried the burden at this stage to show that the expanded definition of machine gun likely exceeds the scope of the ATF's statutory authority. Therefore, plaintiffs have satisfied arguably the most important of the four factors. Judge O'Connor then went on to point out that the Fifth Circuit en banc panel's decision in Cargill also controls on this issue. Judge O'Connor also stated in his order that there is likely irreparable harm, that there is a credible threat of prosecution because of the ATF's interpretation, and he points out that the ATF has already come to homes of plaintiffs in this specific case and other individuals' homes, and that is enough to show irreparable harm. Now, based on that, Judge O'Connor granted the limited injunction, which was in favor of the individual named plaintiffs in this lawsuit, along with Nagr as an organization and their members. So it was limited in some way. It's not a nationwide preliminary injunction, but it is something that protects Nagr and its members and the individual plaintiffs. Now, in response to the granting of that preliminary injunction, the ATF first sought a stay, but it was denied by both Judge O'Connor and then also the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit found, when they denied the stay, that the federal government did not carry their burden to show that they are entitled to a stay pending the appeal. Now, like I mentioned, the FRT case here was kind of put on hold and was in limbo a little bit because the Supreme Court was set to decide the Cargill case. And now that we have that 6-3 decision in Cargill, that decision is being used in this FRT case as support for why the Fifth Circuit should uphold what the lower court did. Now, they just submitted a supplemental letter, and this is what it states to the Fifth Circuit. It states that, consistent with Rule 28J of the Federal Rules of Appellate Procedure and Local Rule 28.4, plaintiff appellee's right to provide notice of supplemental authority relevant to this case. On June 14, 2024, the United States Supreme Court issued a decision affirming the judgment of this court in Garland versus Cario. And then they say that they have attached a copy, and it states that the Supreme Court's decision is relevant because it weighs directly on the central question in this case, the meaning of the statutory phrase single function of the trigger. So now you have the plaintiffs in this lawsuit using that authority in Cargill to support their position on why this ATF regulation of FRTs is invalid. Now, what's important about this is not only did Judge O'Connor rely primarily on the en banc panel's decision and rationale in the Cargill case to support his outcome and his decision, but then you also have the Fifth Circuit, who also relied on the en banc panel's decision in Cargill to support the denial of the stay which the ATF wanted. Both of those courts relied heavily on Cargill and its rationale, and now that rationale was also affirmed by the Supreme Court in that decision. It's also not good news for the ATF that the Supreme Court recently struck down Chevron outright. So any backdrop arguments that they had about Chevron applying to this issue are also done away with. So the ATF is really backed into a corner, and they don't have a lot of solid arguments that they can make when it comes to FRTs. Now, I do want to warn everyone who's maybe watching this to be careful proceeding forward with this specific issue and these items. The ATF, in fact, has been very aggressive when it comes to the possession and sale of FRTs, probably more aggressive than they've been on any other items. This injunction is limited at this time to just the plaintiffs and then also Nagr's members. But what we've seen is that despite that, the ATF has still contacted various individuals, one individual, I believe, in Virginia, about their possession of FRTs. Of course, if you're ever contacted by law enforcement or the ATF, don't talk to them, contact an attorney, and then also maybe if you're an Nagr member, reach out to Nagr because they've dealt with this issue as well. So going forward, this is going to be a very big battle. It's going to be interesting to see how this FRT issue plays out. But if anything else changes, I will let you guys know. So if you guys like this video and you like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm. And then also don't forget that we have a newsletter available. And if you would like to sign up, links are down below. And if you sign up for the newsletter, and once we reach 5,000 subscribers on the newsletter, we will be running a monthly giveaway. And as long as you're a subscriber to that newsletter, you will be automatically entered. But as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And never forget, this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.